Hey guys, Zach Draskwick here, taking a quick break from beating up this school of fish to talk to you about junk fishing in the fall. This is part 2 of my fall transition series for these Guntersville fish. If you haven't checked out the first video, I'll give it a link up above. Junk fishing is not bad fishing. It's using a variety of techniques in a variety of different situations, trying to cover water as quickly as possible to put the most fish possible in your boat. In the transition period, the fish are going to be primarily relating to grass. Now, there are fish doing other things as well, but if you want to play the numbers game, if you want to go out there and have a 20, 30 plus fish day, you need to look in the grass. That's where you're going to find bigger groups of fish. You can find some individuals, catch ones or twos or threes off of boat docks, brush piles, laydowns, things like that. If you want to really get on a big school of fish or have the largest number of fish, finding good healthy grass is key. Now the best way, if you're a tournament fisherman, to target transition fish, as I covered in my first video, is flipping and frogging. But this time of the year, not enough of the grass is set up right to where you can easily do something like that all day long. You might be able to find enough frogging and flipping grass to cover half a day, but what are you going to do for the other half of the day? Now you can go and you can fish grass that isn't quite ready with a frog and flipping and not catch a fish the rest of the day, or you can adjust, do some junk fishing, and continue to put numbers in the boat. Now, when we're talking about fishing shallow grass, the most efficient way to cover shallow vegetation is going to be with some kind of top water. So if they will commit to a surface bait, that is going to be my number one to try to lean on. Now, with these, when I'm fishing the grass, what I'm going to be looking for, if I can't find stuff that's set up right for flipping and frogging, is I'm going to focus on grass that's patchy, where you have some clumps that come up to the surface, and then there's space in between the clumps. There's shallower grass where you can have good water flow through there. Fish really like to hang out in that patchy grass, whether it's coming all the way up to the top or it's subsurface. Either way, that patchy vegetation is very good. The clumpy vegetation is good for holding fish. I'm also looking for stuff that has holes in it. If you're in a good hard bottom area where these fish prefer, like maybe with some shell in them, you're going to have some good holes in the grass. I'm going to be looking and targeting those as well, and I'm going to be focusing on edges, especially if some of the stuff starts to die out. Fish are not going to stay in dead grass. They're going to pull out of it because that grass is depleting the oxygen, so they'll be on the edge. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the deeper edge. That could be the inside edge of the grass line. It will amaze you how shallow these fish will get sometimes, and they'll be on the inside edge where some of that grass had died earlier in the year, and they'll be patrolling the inside edge, especially if you're in a area that's got some bluegill, because it's funny, these bluegill will sometimes get one last hurrah and do a little bit of a spawn right before the weather cools, because it's still very hot out here. So keep your eyes open for an inside grass line if you have it. Sometimes the grass goes all the way to the shore, but occasionally there's an inside edge, and the fish will relate to that as well, and you can catch them in water that's barely covering their backs. Again, I'm focusing on grass. It's not too far off the main body of the creek or close to the main lake, because right now, if you go way to the backs of the pockets and creeks, the water, if it's not turning over now, could turn over any time now, and when it turns over, those fish can be very difficult to catch. All right, now that you maybe have an idea what you're looking for, what kind of lures am I going to be using fishing this grass? In grass that has irregular patches that are coming up, but not all of it is set up into a mat, if it's thicker, I'm going to be using a skinny dipper or a horny toad to work over those clumps, between those clumps, to try to cover water as quickly as possible. I really like a skinny dipper or a horny toad. You know, I'm throwing a skinny dipper, either this Houdini or white trash is a good color. You know, whatever you feel confident in, but you want something that's going directly to you. You want to cover water as quickly as you can this time of the year. Now, if I have to slow down, if they're not really wanting to commit all the way up top, a fluke is a great bait, and it will really turn on as we get a little bit further along into the fall. I'll go to a double fluke rig, but just a regular soft plastic jerk bait. This is the Strike King Caffeine Shad. It's my favorite one to throw. It's got a little bit more salt in it than a fluke, so you can throw it a little bit farther, and it's got a when you're reeling it in, even this little tail is just kicking side to side, and I've caught fish just reeling this thing in. So some kind of a fluke if they won't commit all the way up top. If you're having short strikes or just having them roll your horny toad or skinny dipper, a fluke is a great bait to work in the splotchy grass or along the edges. If you have a grass mat that's not right for frogging, it's thick and it's vertical, they'll still use that mat, but what they'll do is they'll pin bait up against the edges. So in those situations, you can parallel it with your skinny dipper or your horny toad, or work a fluke down the side, and you can catch a lot of fish. Now, if you don't have a lot of floating grass in the area, a buzz bait is a great way to catch some big fish this time of the year, and you can really cover a lot of water with it. It's got a lot of drawing power, so going down the edges of these grass lines with a buzz bait or a whopper plopper is another great lure if you don't have a lot of floating grass. Now, if you find grass that is clumpy, like I said, or has some holes in it, but it doesn't come all the way up to the surface, my number one bait is going to be a square bill if I can get through it. Now, you cannot fish Guntersville any time of the year without a chatterbait tied on, and sometimes you will have to use something like a chatterbait or a swim jig to get through grass if there's a lot of floating stuff or if it's a little bit loose. But if I can get a square bill through it, and I will keep my rod tip high and put on a heavy leader to keep that square bill up if I need to. But a square bill will cover water for you quicker than chatterbait, because as you start to reel that chatterbait quickly, that blade is going to cause it to rise up in the water column. So square bill, if I can work it through there, will let me work it faster, and again, covering water is the name of the game this time of the year. Now, if it is a sunny and flat day, you know, they may not go and commit to your square bill or your chatterbait. You may have to pick up a plastic on some days, but even when I'm picking up a plastic, I am going slow just as fast as I can. As the guy said in some country song, you're going to be going and picking up something like an Ultra Vibe speed worm, or even I even swim in a Ned rig or a small stick bait. You know, don't be afraid to swim in your worm. You want to constantly be turning that handle, and you need to be moving quickly until you catch some fish. Now, if you get a bite, sure, slow down and make a few extra casts in the area, but this isn't the time of the year where you need to go and milk an area for a long time. All right, now for the deeper fish that have not pulled up into the grass, that are that you can find off the ends of points as they're starting to work into these creeks, you can really have some phenomenal days on metal baits this time of the year. I'll try to leave a link above for I had a really good metal bait seminar I think earlier in the year, but having some kind of metal bait like a spoon, a tail spinner, a blade bait, you can really just put a whooping on some of these deeper fish off these points this time of the year on a flutter spoon, a blade bait, or a tail spinner. Now, how I go about choosing one of those, if the fish are suspended up off the bottom, I will go and use a spoon. If they are pinning the bait onto the bottom, that's when I will go and use a blade bait. Again, I'm trying to cover water as quickly as I can, so that's when the tail spinner will come in. If I'm on a point, I'm not sure if there's any fish or not, I will go and I'll work that tail spinner, because I can kind of vary the depth with that and see if there's fish in the area, and then maybe fine tune it if I get a bite or a follower on the tail spinner. One thing to think about is when you're bass fishing, the first person to discover the new pattern is usually the one that's going to do the best starting off. Being the first person to start doing something, start throwing something, is usually the one that's going to be the most successful. So trying to go and keep these A-rig fish honest, keep the jerkbait bite honest as we get further on into the fall is very important, because if you can go and be the first person to get on a good A-rig bite, you're catching fish 5-1 on everyone else. So keep that in mind as you're junk fishing. You know, experiment on your depth, on your lures throughout the day. Try to cover water as quickly as you can, because speed is going to be your friend this time of the year. Use these lures, fish these areas, and I guarantee you will load the boat.